Yeah, baby! Woo! Here we go! Here we go! Yeah! Oh, yeah! Woo! I did it! Yeah! I did it! Woohoo! Now, what did I do, you ask? I faced my fears. I was brave. As many of you know, as some of you know, this past weekend was a really scary one for me. And I've been really procrastinating on this episode because it's a really scary one for me to come up and do. But I hung out with the girl who most recently broke my heart and her new boyfriend, and it was very scary. And the reason I did it, there's quite a few, but she is my best friend's family's, or my best friend's family. She's my two best friends. It's her step sister and biological sister. And so I'm very tight with their family, and I get invited to do all these things, and this is the first time I was like, okay, I'll do it, even though I'm mortified to do it. And not only was it just scary to see just her in general, but it was very scary seeing her boyfriend too. And I've been procrastinating on this episode too long now. I want these to come out every Monday, and it's now Wednesday at 11 a.m. So right when I'm done recording this, I'm gonna post it up and talk about it a little bit more. And so I don't want to do this episode. It's gonna get really vulnerable and scary for me, but I think it's even more important I do it. With that being said, after my last 3 episodes I posted, I decided I was gonna start writing bullet points of what I want to talk about that, and I worked 5 hours on it yesterday, and I had about this much written out. So I'm just gonna shoot from the hip again and see how that goes. So sorry if this is choppy again. Next one should be a lot better. Have a lot more ideas I want to start getting into instead of just relationship and loneliness and all this stuff. But yeah, let's get into it. It's super strange. I don't know where to start, so I'm just gonna start at the beginning. One of the reasons I started this podcast was because I was so scared of this past weekend. And this was a great distraction for me. And I have been thinking about doing it for a while, and I finally decided, hey, instead of thinking about this and getting stressed out about it, let's put all that fear into a productive thing, a good experience, and something that can help at least a few people. So I've been really struggling with it, and it kind of came to a head about 10 days ago, and I freaked out. It was all on my doing scary, or my getting out of your comfort zone episode. And yeah, it finally happened. My therapist gave me really, really solid advice. He said, the reason you're scared so much about this is because you don't know what to expect. And one of my biggest struggles is having too high of expectations, and I want things to go a certain way. And this experience was just completely unpredictable. Excuse me. So he said, know exactly what you're going to do when you see them. When you see her and her boyfriend. So I went, okay, and the whole plan for the weekend was everybody was coming into Austin Friday night. We were going to go to dinner, then we were going to go to karaoke bar, and then the next day we were going to have, the girls were going to split up, the boys were going to split up, and then go to the Austin FC soccer match. So dinner was was the first point, and that's scary for me personally because dinner to me, one of my biggest passions is cooking, and breaking bread with people is my favorite thing to do. Maybe you get a glass of wine or a few drinks, and luckily they showed up late, so I was hanging out with everybody, and it gave me time to really settle down, become myself, get rid of a few of those nervous feelings, and start having fun. And I was really lucky that happened, and I became myself, and I met some new people, and that was a lot of fun. And then we went to karaoke, and that's where they were, and I was shaky hands. I was freaking out. Luckily, somebody drove with me there, so I didn't have too much time to get psyched out in my head. I was talking, having a fun time. Then we showed up. I shotgunned a Red Bull because, again, I am the entertainment. I am the party. And I saw her and said, "Hi, how's it going? I'm Harrison." And she laughed, and then I introduced myself to her boyfriend, and he introduced himself back. And I was like, oh, this isn't very hard. That was my whole plan. Say hi, be really polite and nice, and don't let it bother me. And I didn't for a while, and then, after 2 or 3 drinks, I was feeling not bad. It was still a little uncomfortable. They were all cuddled up right next to me at karaoke, so that was a little weird. And like I said, I don't remember which episode, when I'm uncomfortable, I lean into my personality a lot, and because that's where I find my safety. So I was a little bit over the top. Luckily, that's normal for me, so nobody questioned it. Nobody could really see how uncomfortable I was and how scared I was. And I wasn't really letting it bother me. And then one of the new girls who I haven't met before, we were sitting next to each other just chatting, and she goes, "Okay, I have to ask." And I was like, here we go. And she started asking me questions about mine and my ex's relationship. And she was like, "Oh, so what happened?" And still to this day, I don't know what happened. We were obsessed with each other, and then all of a sudden, she just stopped really communicating and liking me, which is fine. It happens. I'm not, like I always say, I'm not angry. I'm not mad about it, and I have no resentment. And so I said, "I don't know." She just, it didn't happen. And then she goes, "Oh, so was it just like a fling, or did you guys have feelings for each other?" And that's when it really started getting not great for me. I didn't show it at all. At least I don't think I did. But I got really uncomfortable and kind of boxed off. Luckily, though, it's karaoke and nobody's paying attention to you, and it's dark, and so I was just sitting there quietly until, my time is there, and then I go up on stage, or I make some jokes, and then I sit back down and run around in my own head. And the answer was yes. We did have quite strong feelings for each other. And she was like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, why are you here? Like, how are you doing this?" And that's kind of the theme of this episode is, and I'm going to talk a lot more about it in a little bit, but she was like, you're really brave for coming out here. Why are you doing this? And I was like, because you got to get out of that comfort zone, man. I'm using this as a big jumping off point for me, because that's where the growth is. And like I said, I still want to hang out with all of my best friends, and I love my own family. They're amazing, but this family that I tried to marry into is like a chosen family to me. I love them all, including my ex. I think she's a great person, and she just didn't like me as much as I liked her, which is completely fine. But yeah, so we went from karaoke, and then we all went back to their Airbnb, and the whole time I was there, or driving there, is about 20 minutes away, I was really in my head like, hey, do I want to go? Do I want to just go home? And luckily, I didn't drink very much that night. I was safe to drive the whole time. And I really started getting in my head, so I showed up. And about 5 minutes in, I went, "Yep, I want to leave." So I went home, and that drive home, I was not in a good place. It was I was really beating myself up, and I was mad that I was sad, because it was a really sad thing. It was this girl who I loved, and I still deeply admire, and I'm over her. I don't want her anymore, but it was still somebody you loved, with somebody else. And the hardest part was we were leaving, and I heard her talk to her boyfriend and ask him the same question she used to ask me. And yeah, I was freaking out, and when I get uncomfortable now, or even when I'm happy and sad or mad or any of my feelings, I think back, or I think about what is the universe trying to show me in this moment. And I couldn't come up with anything, so I think I tried to kind of force it and going, yeah, you're clearly not over this girl. You're clearly still in love with her, and you can't talk to any girls, and tomorrow's gonna suck, and you're just gonna feel like this forever. And I believed that, and I didn't know how I was gonna do this podcast and face all of the 11 people who watch this, and talk about, yeah, it gets better, do the scary things. It ends up being great, because it wasn't great. It was so hard. And I cried myself to sleep that night, which wasn't great, and it was hard. And the next morning I woke up, and I was feeling terrible. I didn't know what to do, so I went for a walk. I did my meditation. I read a little bit, and I really leaned into that routine I built for myself, which really grounds me and centers me. And then I went to a showing, and it's a really beautiful house. It's in the Austin skyline, so I had this great view, and I started reading this really good book. Like I always say, Charles Bukowski, he's my favorite poet, and I read about 40 pages of that. And I was sitting there, and it was just absolutely gorgeous morning. It was like 65, sun was out, and then I started really, centering myself, and I wasn't thinking about it too much. And then I went on my showing, and it went really well. And all of a sudden, I felt really free, and I wasn't thinking about her. And when I was thinking about her, it was, oh, I don't have those feelings anymore. And I don't know how to describe it, and I don't know what my feelings were in that moment or the night before. But I think it was just that emotional exhaustion and the toll and the fear I had all coming up at once. And yes, the morning, the relationship, and the emotions that came up, and I think I was just exhausted from it all. And the past, was it 6 months now, of just the hardest times of my life, and everything coming to a point and a head, and I did it, and I was okay, and I was safe, and I kind of just let it all go. And in that moment, it was really, really nice. And I was hanging out with all my friends, and I had, I'm working on a couple deals right now, and I'm fairly busy, but I'm kind of, working through all of it. And I did a lot of big things in a couple hours for myself that I've never done before. And that's work on a few deals, deal with my emotions, have fun and be sad at the same time. And I've never done that. So there's that absolutely beautiful moment. And then the day just kept getting better and more fun, and I kept noticing small little details about myself and others and all these things. And it was really cool, man. And then looking back on it now, it's, oh, that's the point of doing the hard things. That's the point of putting yourself out there and being brave, is because it's never as bad as it seems, and you've survived 100% of your bad days. So I was driving to the Airbnb, and then we went to Topgolf, and I started talking to our new boyfriend, and I find a lot of comfort in the fact that he's a good guy. He really is, and he's the complete opposite of me. I'm 6'2", he's probably 5'8" or something like that. I'm not good with heights, but he's short. He's very jacked. I'm not. And he's very quiet and reserved, which I'm not either. I'm not that person, and there was some solace in that oh, we wouldn't have worked out if this is what you want, because that's not who I am. And we went through the day, and we played some pickleball, and then we went to the soccer match. And this is the part where I realized I was completely over her. And because I'm a big fanatic, right? And I painted my face. I looked like an idiot. I was having a blast, and I've started taking my shirts off at sporting events, and me and my two best friends, we were sitting there talking, screaming, and then a big play happened, and everybody in the stadium stood up, and we were screaming, going nuts. And I happened to look over at them, and they're just curled up in their seats on their phones, and I'm like, oh God. Everything does happen for a reason, because that's so not what I'm looking for in my life. I don't want a partner who just sits there on her phone while I'm the crazy guy at the sporting event. So that was a really cool moment for me personally, and another beautiful moment of clarity and peace. And then the rest of that night just went on as a normal party weekend, hanging out with a big group of friends. We went back to the Airbnb, stayed up late, drinking, having a fun time. And this is this next little bit I'm going to talk about really shows me how important what I'm doing is, or how important this podcast is, and opening myself up and being vulnerable. One of my most closed off friends, as we were all I was about to go home, they were all about to go to sleep. It was just me and him, and he sits down on the couch. I'm sitting in a chair, just on my phone, thinking about, all right, what's the plan? I'm just going to go home and fall asleep. And he sits down and he asks me, he's like, what's the meaning of life? And I went, what? And he goes, not your like the meaning of life, but your meaning to life. And and we ended up staying up until 5 a.m, getting deep and talking and searching for answers together. And he opened up about how much he struggles and how much he hates some of the stuff he does, and how scary some of the stuff he does. And one thing I struggled, I'm starting to really deeply struggle with is, not deeply struggle, but yeah, there's some fear to it, is when people give me compliments. I don't know what to do. And he told me how much he admired what I'm doing with this, and how much he admires me just walking up to strangers and starting a conversation, or when I see somebody, if I like her hair, or I like his shirt, or whatever, I'll just tell them, like, hey, I like your shirt, man. Or, hey, you have a really pretty shoes on. I don't know, I do that all the time. And he's like, I don't know how to handle that. Like I don't like because I had those thoughts and I want to say them, but I don't. And we had a few conversations like that. Like he told me how he hates school. He's got a year left, but he hates it, and he's like, that's the only thing I've ever done. That's the only thing I've ever been good at. But I don't want to do it anymore, and I hate where I'm at. I don't have any friends. There's nobody I get along with. And I told him, listen, man, it's your life. If you hate where you're at, you can move. If you don't like this, you can quit. And there's no. Everybody gets so upset about quitting, but if you're not happy doing it, if you're not happy where you're at, if you think you deserve better, then go find that better. That's the same with relationships. If you're not happy with your boyfriend or your girlfriend, you're allowed to break up with them. Or if you hate going to school, you can drop out. And I know my dad probably hates this fact, but I've dropped out of college and university twice now, and I've never looked back. I had a little bit of guilt, making that decision, because yes, I put a lot of time in here, and it's expensive, but it's not for me. It really it's not for you. Don't do it. And if people are going to be mad at you, so be it. And then with everything else, the fear, he didn't understand how to be brave. And I told him, like, it all boils down to getting out of your comfort zone. Like I said, you can start small with little compliments to strangers, or talking to a girl at the bar, or taking a cold shower, or going for a walk when you haven't exercised in 3 years. Don't do what I do to go hang out with the girl who broke your heart in October and hang out with her and her new boyfriend, because I was well within my right to say, no, I'm not doing this. Start small, and if you're scared, do it scared. And I told him this. The way I do that, the way I get out of my comfort zone, the way I be brave and take these massive risks and jump into the deep end, is I just tell myself it's gonna be easy. What's the worst that can happen? And I lie to myself. I lie to myself all the time. About, hey, when I'm flat broke, I go, oh, it's fine. I'll figure this out. I don't know if I'm gonna figure it out. I really don't, but I will, and so far I always have. And with this weekend, I literally told him, I said, hey, if I can go do this and have this conversation with you at 5 a.m. in the morning with my ex and her new boyfriend 10 feet away in the same bed, you can do whatever the fuck you want to do, man. There's no wrong way to do this. There's no right way to do this. Just be a little bit brave. And if you can be a little bit brave and jump to the next moment, it gets easier, and it gets easier, and it gets easier. And you gotta ask yourself the big questions and go, hey, if I quit this school right now, even though I have 1 year left, will that make my life better or worse? Can you sacrifice a year? Because there's two sides of me conflicted with that. One side is, you're this close, finish it, what's a year in the long run? The other side of me is, it's 1 year. What, we got 75 of those, 80 of those if we're lucky. And that's a big chunk of time, but also a really small chunk of time. So it's that framing mindset of what's gonna make me, more content and more happy in the long run. And with as devastating and as hard this whole weekend was for me, I found out a hell of a lot more about myself, about others, about life, and finding those precious little beautiful moments in a sea of fear. Because that's mostly what life is. It's this constant storm that never goes away. But sometimes there's an opening and you see a beautiful sunset. And if you can do that, if you can find the peace and do the hard things, life really starts opening up. It really does. It's so beautiful. Like, I have this tattoo on my arm for a few reasons. It's La Vita Bella. It means life is beautiful in Italian. And I got this because I'm really bad at finding the beautiful things sometimes. And I also need a permanent reminder on my body that life isn't that bad. And it's this gorgeous, precious moments that don't last very long. So be in them as long as you can. So yeah, it was a scary weekend, but we got through it. And I promise you, if you're scared to do the next thing, fucking do it. Be a little bit brave, because it gets better. It gets so much better. There's so much beauty out there. There's so many great things. And if you're in a really hard time, just find one thing to hold on to, even if that's just a fucking croissant. Because that's what I do. When I'm in the throes of it, I eat a croissant and everything gets a little bit better. And I promise you, it will get better. Just be brave and take that next moment. And that brings me to a poem. It's called If by Rudyard Kipling. It is one of the best poems of all time, and it relates to so many things. And the reason it's so important to me is because my dad runs this company, and I really watched him open up and be vulnerable a little bit, and he's one of the most stoic guys I know. And he was talking about this poem, and he started tearing up, and that's something I've never seen before. And it encapsulates a lot of what I talk about on this podcast. So does Man in an Arena, which I read a few back. But if you can be brave, the world will change. And let's get into it. Bear with me. If by Rudyard Kipling. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. If you can wait and not be tired by waiting or being lied about, don't deal in lies. Or being hated, don't give way to hating. And yet, don't look too good or walk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by the knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken, and stoop and build them up with worn-out tools. If you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pinch and toss. If you lose and start again at your beginnings and never breathe a word about your losses. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your long turn after they're gone. And hold on when there is nothing in you, except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings, nor lose the common touch. If neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men court with you, but none too much. If you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it. And to which is more, you'll be a man, my son. I'm going to post the full version of that in the bio because I don't want to ruin that. But that's it. If you can do all the things you want to do and keep your character and know who you are and do the hard things and be just a little bit brave, you can do whatever you want. So, fellas, go do whatever you want. All right, that's all I got for today. I love you all. I'm really proud of you. And please, for the love of fucking God, be a little bit brave. Follow me on Instagram, Boy Talk Pod. If you have any questions or comments or want me to talk about anything, you can DM me there or email me at boytalkmenshealth@gmail.com. Yeah, proud of you guys. Keep it up. See you next time.